the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. On this Tuesday evening, although where Alicia is, it's only 5 p.m. It's 5 p.m. somewhere. All right. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're having a great week. Today we're going to talk about, I've been debating all these leftists, and they have different kinds of arguments and levels of arguments, but basically they have the same arguments, and they're fairly intelligent. They're quite intelligent. Some of them are quite intelligent. And why is this so prevalent? Why do so many people believe it? It really doesn't make any sense. It really is contradictory to everything we see with our eyes and the evidence of what is going on in the world. And why is this so hard? Dina's going to sleep. Why are you going to sleep? I just started. Man, I put people to sleep in 2 minutes, just like that. Maybe he's on some time zone far, far away. Why is socialism so appealing? Now, I've answered this question lots of times and in different ways, and it's 3 a.m. where Dean is. So, Brian, thank you. Thanks for the... Brian's in Canada, so he's not going to sleep yet. It's still early in Canada. Why is it so appealing to so many people? Both the people I debate, but their following is huge, right? They have a lot more bigger following than I do, right? Our ideas are in the tiniest of minorities. So I think there's a lot to say and a lot of shows to do and a lot of perspectives to take and a lot of investigation to engage in to figure this out, because it is important, right? The more we understand what it is that motivates people, the more maybe we can address it, the more maybe we can convince people to turn their things around. Roger says it's 9 a.m. in Seoul, South Korea. He's in South Korea. I'll be speaking in South Korea in a few days, but they want me to do it. They wouldn't let me into the country, even with vaccines. It's ridiculous. They wanted me to quarantine in South Korea. So I'm doing it via the internet, but it's like at 11:30 a.m. in the morning in Seoul time. So I'm going to be speaking from 10:30 to midnight or something like that on a panel about the South Korean economy post-COVID, something like that. So it should be fun. It should be fun. I'm a big fan of Yeonmi Park, the North Korean defector. If I can get her on the show at some point, I'll try to get her on. Anyway, understanding where they're coming from, understanding what is preventing them from seeing what I think is reality, is, I think, an important cause for all of us to engage in, and not one to be dismissive of. It's not like I hear some leftists say about conservatives, oh, they're just mentally ill, or they have different genes, and I hear some conservatives say that about the left. It's not useful. This is a battle of ideas. This is a battle of minds. This is a battle about ideas, and my assumption and our assumption as objectivists is that people have the capacity to reason, the capacity to think, and why they're not exercising it when it comes to this issue of capitalism is important. And it's particularly important given that many of these people are smart, right? Many of these people are smart. So it's not an issue of IQ. Many of these people are successful. It's not maybe even an issue of competence. So what is going on? I think the more we understand it, and I don't have all the answers, and I'm certainly not a psychologist, so whatever I do, whatever I comment in here in psychology is somewhat speculative. But I think I'm just sharing with you, given how many shows I do, I'm sharing with you kind of my thoughts about this. All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate the support from you guys, and OMG puppies. I'll get to your question in a second, in a minute. All right. So before we jump in to that, as usual, just want to remind you that you can ask questions about the topic, about anything really. Completely open in terms of the Q&A. So, but to do that, you have to participate in the super chat. You can do it for $1, 99 cents. Jonathan just contributed 99 cents. Brian, $1. You can do it for any amount. Of course, the more dollars you put to the question, the more likely it is that I will answer it early. I try to get to all the questions. I try to answer all of them. But I do discriminate a little bit in favor of those who ask questions with large dollar amounts. Also, don't forget to like the show before you leave. A lot of you, I know, don't stay till the end or leave at some point, but press that like button. Doesn't cost too much, and that'll be great. Let's see, Adam. Thank you. Yes. Another recommendation for a Korean show. I have to keep track of all of these. And I will. And Stephen, thank you, Stephen. And of course, with the super chat, we have Alejandrina on the super chat here on the chat, who kind of works to promote the show, and a little bit of marketing, a little bit of reminding people to like, to share, and of course to contribute. Our goal for every show is about $400. We already almost at $100, so that's pretty quick. First 5 minutes at this rate, we'll have a record-breaking show. I might go on for hours like this if you keep up this pace. But yeah, if if we can do more than $400, that's always welcome. We're on track to have a pretty good month. A pretty good month from a super chat, from a YouTube super chat perspective. Not a record-breaking month, not a super great month, but a good solid month. So keep it up, guys, and let's close the month with style. So thanks everybody who contributes. Of course, you should be, if you're not a subscriber, you should become a subscriber. Press the you can press the subscribe button right there. Press the bell so that press the bell so that you get notified when I go live, so you won't miss a show. Won't miss a show. All right, let's see. What do we want? Oh, yeah. Somebody asked me. Somebody said in the chat. I don't know. The big thing right now is this news about Steven Crowder getting ambushed on his own show. I guess Sam Seder wanted to debate Crowder, and Crowder backed out or didn't do it. So Crowder was going to interview this other leftist. I don't know his name, and this leftist showed up with Sam Seder to debate Crowder, and Crowder flipped out. So I don't know the details. I haven't seen the video. It is pretty dishonest to spring a debate on somebody who unprepared, to spring a guest on somebody who was not invited. I would be happy if somebody did that to me. But let me just say, I guess that Steven Crowder does not want to debate Sam Seder, but I certainly will. Now, I know I don't bring the crowd that a Steven Crowder brings, but I'm a much better debater, and my views are much more diametrically opposed to those of Sam Seder. I have also engaged in some of Sam's videos and critiqued them. So bring it on, Sam Seder. I'm waiting. You can pop up anytime to debate me. I prefer if you let me know in advance so we can advertise this and get a good viewership. But anytime, bring it on. I will not turn you down, even as a surprise guest on my show. So, open invitation to any leftist, in particular those who have large following, to join us here on the Yaron Brook Show for a serious debate about pretty much any topic they choose. So, you guys can make it happen by telling Sam Sita to drop this whole Crowder thing and to come on over and debate me. And I think that will be a lot of fun. All right. Should we jump into the topic? I think we've got all the announcements out of the way. I'll just let you know that there will be a show on Thursday, then there'll be a show on Saturday and Sunday, and then we'll do one on next Tuesday. I think Sunday and Tuesday are going to be devoted to supporter Q&A type shows. I'm actually going to ask, I'm going to see if we can split those up so we have one in the middle of the month and one in the end of the month. I think having both those shows at the end of the month right next to each other is not as good, because then it's just you've already got one Q&A, and then another Q&A is not as interesting for you guys. So next time, maybe next month, we can split them up and put them at different times of the month. So that'll be Sunday. I'll be doing a Yaron Rules either Thursday or Saturday. Potentially Saturday we'll do Yaron Rules for Life, number 5, I think it is. I'm trying to do 2 of those every month. I have a sponsor for 2 of those every month, so we will try to do one on Thursday. We'll come up with a good topic for Yaron Rules. Of course, I'm open to suggestions of topic. Anybody who wants to sponsor a topic. I do have a sponsor for a topic on parenting. I will be doing that. I'm looking at some time in early July to do one on parenting. I've invited Gina Gorlin and maybe one other parent to join me. So that's going to be a really good show. Maybe July 6th, I think, somewhere around there. We'll be doing a show on parenting with Gina Gorlin and maybe one other guest. We will see. All right. What's going on with all these people attracted to socialism? A lot of it, as we've talked about in the past, a lot of this could be attributed to just ignorance. A lot of people are truly ignorant of history, certainly of the history of capitalism, of the history of, let me just do this. One second. History of capitalism, the history of just the human race. And they don't have any kind of sense of what life was like before capitalism. They don't have any sense of what actually capitalism has done because they're not taught it. They don't know it. So some of the support I think socialism and socialist ideas get comes strongly from a perspective of ignorance of history. I also think there's a significant ignorance with regard to what capitalism is. People associate the current state of the world with capitalism. They consider what's going on today with capitalism, with all the problems and the warts and the difficulties that actually are real, that do happen. All of those problems associated with capitalism, including kind of the cronyism and people in poverty and the lack of maybe social mobility or economic mobility, although there's some argument about how much of a lack there really is. They just don't know. They think this is it. This is the alternative. This or some ideal of socialism. So there's a lot of ignorance out there. There's a lot of just not knowing. Oh, Jeff is late for the Alejandrina birthday party. But thank you, Jeff. That is very generous gift to the Yaron Brook Show and to Alejandrina, in Alejandrina's honor. So I appreciate that. I think a hugely powerful motivation for why people tend to be socialist, and we'll talk more about this. This is going to be a major theme because I want to talk about the psychological implications of this, is that they want to be good. That is, they associate socialism, welfareism, they associate the welfare state with morality, with being a good person. They associate with justice. They associate with being a good human being. Now, I try to think back on why I was a socialist, because I was a socialist before I read Atlas Shrugged. Now, I was young, so I was, I read Atlas Shrugged when I was 16. So it's, it's hard to extrapolate from yourself, and it's hard to extrapolate from yourself when you're young. But what motivated me to be a socialist? I'd say a few things. One is a complete lack of understanding of what capitalism was. I really didn't know. I didn't know what business was. I didn't know where wealth came from. The world was just as it is. I was born into this world. It's as it is. And do I like what I see or don't I like what I see? And so I'd say that's point number one, just ignorance. I knew history. I knew dates and battles and generals and politicians and Greek and Rome. But I didn't know, and this is interesting because I don't know that anybody focuses on this in their curriculum for history. I didn't know what life was like. And there's a sense in which I still don't know what life is like 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. I mean, that you don't study how did people live? What was life like? No electricity. People dying all around you. So I had no clue about capitalism, no clue about business, no clue where wealth came from. And I was an altruist. I mean, I truly believed that the purpose was to help other people. That's what morality meant. To be a good person was to help others, particularly help people within your tribe. But I had a sense that that was kind of wrong. I remember telling my parents once when I was like 12 that if I fell in love with a Muslim or an Arab, I would marry them. They were shocked and upset. And my parents were pretty leftist liberal, but yet here I was saying, well, you treat people as individuals. That only went so deep because I was also really collectivist at the same time. In some respects, maybe that was a first indication, maybe I wasn't as collectivist. So, the quality of life, the evolution of life, what life was like, people don't know, I didn't know, but this whole idea of the purpose of morality and what it meant to be a good person and what it meant to be heroic, right? There was a big part of growing up in Israel was focused on heroes and being a hero, what it meant to be heroic. And for us, or for me, what it meant to be heroic was sacrificing yourself to some cause, and that cause was typically the cause of the nation, the cause of the state, the cause of the people. And capitalism was clearly not about that. Capitalism was about people just, as I saw it at the time, being superficial, being materialistic, not caring, and just living their lives for no particular purpose, right? This is Jordan Peterson's meaning of life, right? You have to find meaning outside of yourself. Well, I had meaning outside of myself. It was the sacrifice to whatever. Fill in the blank. So I remember that in class, as kids, we used to argue about whose parents were poorer, with the idea that poverty brought with it virtue. That is, we weren't arguing which of our parents was more successful and richer and so on. No, that would have been a black mark. We were arguing which of our parents were poorer and therefore which one of us was more virtuous having grown up in a poorer household. Poverty was somehow virtuous. And I have no idea where that came from. No idea where that came from. Other than seeped in from a culture of altruism. For a culture that says, never be selfish, never think of self, always be selfless, think of others. Others are what's important. Therefore, wealth is a sign of self-interest. Wealth is a sign of selfishness. Wealth must be therefore condemned. So I definitely had that kind of psychology, the psychology of, Michael, wow, thank you. That's like fourth Super Chat question. And, the sum of money just keeps increasing that Michael's doing today. I will get to all these questions, I promise, in a little bit. Let me just get a little bit of this off, some of my thoughts off, and then we'll get to some of this. There's some good questions here. So the altruism plays a huge role. So I, felt guilty for the fact that maybe we had a little bit more money than others, and we never had a lot of money, but we had a little bit more money, and I think and it was this guilt thing that drove, no, my parents are poorer than your parents, because you didn't want to own that guilt, right? You didn't want to own that guilt. So there was a lot of that. There was the collectivism, the altruism, the guilt, the association with virtue to poverty and vice to capitalism. And I have to say that my views of capitalism were tainted by the fact that when I was between the ages of 14 and 16, I spent the ages of 14 and 16 in the United States. And going to school, middle school and then high school, 8th and 9th grade, in the United States. And I hated it. I hated it because Americans struck me, particularly American kids, but Americans in general, as superficial, as materialistic, as unambitious. I mean, the kids in my school were super in school at least, not ambitious, is just uninteresting. Uninteresting. So it was, so I was already, that was to me capitalism. America represented capitalism. And it represented capitalism from a cultural perspective, and it represented capitalism from an economic perspective. I saw that they were rich, but I also saw that they were spiritually poor. Right? So add all this up, and at least for me, and I think otherwise other than that, I was pretty healthy. I was at a fairly strong sense of competence and confidence in the future and general benevolence towards people. But the altruism and the ignorance undercut all of that. And I lived with this idea that you have to help people. And part of that is, I think, a sin of intelligence and ability and being, relatively speaking, at least middle class. Although relative to Americans, we were poor. Within Israel, we were middle class. And that means that you have a sense. I had a sense, I think a lot of these socialists I debate have a sense, that they can take care of themselves. They'll be okay. But they have a strong sense that other people cannot. They have a strong sense of superiority. And I definitely think I had that when I was 16. And then, of course, I read Atlas Shrugged. And it blew me out of the water. It completely educated me about what business is. what Dagny and Reardon and these people actually do. And it clicked that the things around me are not just there. They don't just show up. They're not just a fact of reality. That they are created, that somebody must create them. It's today I had a debate with a very intelligent professor of politics, and it's like all you want to talk about was, all right, we've got all this wealth, we've got all this stuff. How do we allocate it? What's a just allocation of the stuff we have? What if some people have more and some people have less of the stuff we have? And it was like, where does the stuff come from? It doesn't just show up. It's not just here. Somebody has to create it. And that's essentially where property rights come from. It's the fact that that creation happens, and that creation is necessary for life. It's necessary for flourishing, for human survival, for human success, for individual human success. As I said to Vash, you either produce or you die. Even if you don't literally die, you psychologically die. So, they just, and Atlas Shrugged really, Atlas Shrugged really shows you that. It's one of the few books that actually describes what happens in business. Not in a fantasy way. This is stuff that really happens. The kind of negotiations, on the one hand, the cronies, on the other hand, the productive ones, what the productive ones have to do. It's not sugar-coated, it's hard work. And these business executives work super hard, and if you read about real-life examples, you know this. Dagny's not unique in that sense. So it truly is amazing how much she gets into Atlas Shrugged. So Atlas Shrugged taught me about what was what business actually did, and where values actually came from, and where this all the stuff that I had around me, where it was from. And then, the real revelation to me of Atlas Shrugged was, and you mean I can live for myself? And there's a moral code, and it's right to live for yourself? That was a true revelation. Truly stunning. I've been taught since I was this big that my purpose in life was to live for others. Right? So it cured me of the altruism, at least explicitly. But once you're cured of the altruism, but it's not enough. There's also the knowledge and the understanding of what capitalism is, and what production is, and where wealth comes from, where products come from, where reality, it all comes from. So Atlas Shrugged cures you of that, if you're honest about it. But for a lot of people, even Atlas Shrugged doesn't do it. And a lot of people won't even engage with Atlas Shrugged. So what kind of psychology does altruism inculcate in people? And I think there are two versions of it. And I think the psychology then makes them super anti-capitalist. And if you combine that with their ignorance and their blind spots and their unwillingness to look because it'll challenge their deep psychological held beliefs, it's almost hopeless to convince them. So I'd say there are two ways in which altruism affects people. Right? One is, let me just, One is the way it affects the person of, I'd say, mixed ability or mediocre ability, or weak ability. The person who might be struggling a little bit in class, might be struggling with math or with any topic and is just not sure of himself. And altruism basically teaches that person that it's okay to fail. It's okay to be poor. It's okay not to succeed. Because the role of others, the role of those who are successful, is to help you. It's to assist you. It's to provide for you. And what it does, what altruism gives that person, instead of instilling that person, which what you would like is with ambition and with excitement and with motivation to try harder, with the conviction that they can succeed if they try harder. What altruism gives them the conviction is it's okay to fail. Because others are required. For others, it is a duty to help. And indeed, your moral status as being helped is not inferior, it's not a downgrade. The meek shall inherit the earth. Indeed, you're the virtuous one. Your poverty, your lack of success, your inability actually makes you in some moral sense superior to those who have to sacrifice for you. Right. So it instills a psychology of victimhood, because if they're not helping me enough, it's their fault, it's not my fault. It tells them that they're entitled. It instills in them a psychology of entitlement. And maybe most importantly, it denies them the confidence. It denies them the ambition of trying, of achieving, of succeeding, of pushing themselves to the limit, of being the best that they can be. Because being the best is a burden. Altruism also instills them with real fear. Real fear. Because their lives now, they come to learn, are completely dependent on others. They depend on others for others' charity, livelihood, welfare, jobs that others create for them. They become dependent. And they embrace that dependency because that's what morality, in a sense, demands. And that's what morality, it makes sense. But that dependency has to cause them to feel fear. To fear reality, to fear change, to fear what happens to them in the world. What happens if these other people decide to be selfish bastards and not help and not do their moral duty? How am I going to survive? How am I going to survive? If my whole life depends on others. Remember, altruism teaches you that your life depends on others. You're either a sacrificer or to be sacrificed to. That is the moral responsibility. So it instills a psychology of fear of taking care of yourself. Fear of being left alone. Fear of what? Of the marketplace, of capitalism. Fear of oh my God, in capitalism, if something happens, I lose my job or something bad happens, I'm going to be dependent on the charity of strangers. But they owe me. Their moral duty is to help me. Why should I be dependent on their charity when morality dictates that they have to help me? To be good people, they must sacrifice for me. So, of course, the welfare state. Let's make sure they do the sacrifice. Let's make sure they help me. So, altruism inculcates a psychology of fear, of resentment, of envy, of those who are successful, of victimhood, of entitlement. It is destructive to self-esteem. I mean, the whole idea of self-esteem is pretty selfish. Why should you esteem yourself? Altruism rejects the idea that you should esteem yourself properly, fully. So it takes the people who are, not the most intelligent, not the greatest achiever, and it turns them into entitled victims, whining about the horrors of capitalism, the horrors of those who have succeeded and create wealth, who are not helping them enough because they deserve it. It's interesting, though, that you don't find as many socialists among the poor as one would expect. Yes, I mean, there's generally support for the welfare state among poor people. But there's not as many out-and-out socialists. There's not as much whining and as much victimhood mentality as you would really expect. I think a lot of, particularly people who grow up in poverty, people who know what poverty is, I think there's a sense in which at least some of them are complete losers and destroy their lives, but a lot of them are connected in some way to reality. They don't buy the altruism. They don't expect people to help them. They bootstrap themselves, some of them more successfully than others, but they have a certain connection to reality that makes this whole socialist co-ops, wage slavery sound as much bullshit as it is. And they don't buy it. They want help. They'll take the check from the government. They'll take the unemployment insurance. They might even stay home if the unemployment insurance is high enough. But they don't have quite the mentality of some of these intellectuals, wealthy advocates of socialism. So what does altruism do, to the smart, to the able, to the ones who have the potential to be successful, the ones who have the confidence that, they're going to have a career, they're going to do fine financially, not necessarily because their parents have a lot of money, but because, they're smart enough to take care of themselves. But at least they have some semblance of that. At least they think they're smart. Well, in them, what altruism creates is guilt. It encourages them to sacrifice, but how much can they sacrifice? And they don't really want to sacrifice. And they are successful when they see other people not being successful. Now, many of these smart kids who take the socialism seriously and take these ideas seriously and maybe are not as, and resent capitalism, resent the world around them as selfish and materialistic and superficial, they go into academia, they go and become intellectuals. They buy into certain lines of argument. They represent the poor in the name of altruism, in the name of justice, in the name of fairness. But they're not them. They're not the poor. They whine for the poor. They complain for the poor. They declare victimhood for the poor. But they're doing fine. I mean, they might not be doing great. None of these leftist intellectuals seem to be doing great, although some do. I mean, obviously, Paul Krugman and Robert Reich are all doing very, very well for themselves. But they become big, big defenders of socialism, of equality. I mean, the worst of them, the ones who are really nasty, the ones who are driven by envy and, envy eats them up because they resent the fact that there are people even smarter than them and people more successful than them, or people who they think are not as smart as them but become richer than them. They become nihilists, egalitarians. But the people I debate about socialism don't strike me as nihilists. But take somebody like Vosh. I don't know anything about him, but he seems like he grew up in a upper middle class home. He seems like he hasn't spent much time out of his basement and away from video games. It doesn't strike me that he's really had a job. I mean, all his claims about people don't get paid based on productivity sounds like a spoiled brat who's never actually worked, never actually got a raise, never actually had to compete for a job, never actually had to compete for a raise. Somebody who had on a profitable opportunity to entertain people while playing video games and made money doing that. But is riddled with the guilt associated with the altruism. Now, Lester says Bill Gates is a good example of guilt. Yeah, most rich people, Zuckerberg, all of these guys are riddled with guilt. But they are not coming out advocating for socialism. I mean, they're advocating for various forms of mixed economy, and they're advocating for raising taxes on themselves. Not to 100%, Bill Gates has made clear. And I think in some interview he said, I feel like I should feel guilty for the fact that I have a whole room in my house that's just one big, what do you call it when, a kind of a room with a thing that you bounce on, that you. But almost guilty, doesn't quite feel guilty. I don't know that Bill Gates actually feels guilty. I think Bill Gates thinks he needs to feel guilty. Again, the role of altruism. But what is the psychology of these people that are smart, that are intellectual? He has a whole room of trampolines. That's right, a whole room of trampolines. Well, they have a sense of superiority. And what they'll tell you is that, yeah, they can take care of themselves. They claim they're not afraid to compete under capitalism, although I think they too are very, very afraid. But what motivates them is fear for the other, which they view as a virtue, because they care about other people. They are convinced that most people can't take care of themselves. Because remember, capitalism is a system that depends on self-reliance. Capitalism is a system that depends on people taking care of themselves. Capitalism is a system that depends on virtue. It is a system that rewards virtue, selfish virtue. But you see, most intellectual people, most intelligent people who take altruism seriously are convinced that most people cannot be good. They cannot be successful. Most people cannot achieve anything. They certainly can't achieve morality, can't achieve virtue. Most people, according to them, have to be taken care of. So they're imbued with paternalism. Now, they don't have enough money to change the world. So they advocate for those people who do have enough money, for that money to be taken away from them. So not they get it, but that those people that they're responsible for get it. Because morality has taught them that they're responsible for people who are not that successful, who have not done that well. So I have this psychology of a philosopher king, this superiority, this sense of, it's my responsibility in the world to take care of other people. And by taking care of them, I need to defend them against, quote, wage slavery, against exploitation, against being used by the capitalist system. It's a system they can't survive in. So while it's relatively easy to deal with ignorance, it's relatively easy to teach people about what happens in history, although most of them don't believe you. You can try. The real challenge we have, as I've said many times, is to challenge the altruism. The altruism is destructive to everybody who embraces it. The able and the not able, the intellectual and the non-intellectual, the achiever and the non-achiever. Their lives are all destroyed in one way or another by the altruism. They either feel guilty, like a Bill Gates or Zuckerberg, or they think they need to feel guilty, and therefore that shapes their action, because they all want to virtue signal, not to the world, but to themselves. They want to feel like they're good, feel like they're virtuous. They all need morality. And this is the key. Everybody wants to be good. Morality is the science that teaches us what is good. And they accept what they're being taught by the expert about what is good. And now they want to be that. But they can't, or they don't really want it, or they're split about it. And that creates a psychological tension that you can't escape. And now the knowledge you provide them is meaningless. Because what does it matter if they understand history better, if they're riddled with guilt? What does it matter if they understand history better, if they're riddled with fear about reality, fear about their ability to survive? What matters in terms of what happened in history if they resent other people? By the way, the intellectuals and the rich resent the poor because they have to sacrifice to them and they have to take care of them. And that, while that's what it means to be good, it also is no fun. And of course, the socialists also resent the poor because the poor are not socialists. They're really pissed off. Now, even if you give up the altruism, or even if you tuck the altruism away somewhere, it's very hard to get rid of the emotions, the psychological damage that altruism does to you. The resentment of other people for being successful. The resentment of other people because you need to help them. The resentment of other people because they're not living up to the moral standards of altruism. The fear that altruism inculcates in you because now you're dependent on other people. By the way, that fear also affects the successful. Because the successful know that their morality, their goodness, depends on other people as well, on their ability to serve other people, or their willingness to serve other people. Will they live up to it? Will they make it into heaven? So all of this, it causes people to be alienated from themselves, who are they? It causes people to be alienated from other people, to fear reality and to fear the world and to fear other people, to resent them. And those are very difficult psychological things to overcome. Very difficult. And all a consequence, not just of, but of altruism. I mean, you can add to altruism mind-body dichotomy and, for religious people, the holding on to mysticism. All these have negative psychological consequences. Just altruism is so insidious. So the real battle is to try to change that moral code, to really try to challenge the idea of altruism, to present an alternative to it, because most people don't know there's an alternative to it. I didn't know when I was growing up that there was an alternative to altruism. For me and for everybody I talk to, morality equals altruism. There is no other option. They've never heard of another option. There's no alternative. And the younger we can get people engaged in an alternative, the more likely it is that they can come out of it psychologically healthy, right? That the altruism won't go too deep, won't affect them too badly. So the battle really is altruism versus egoism. That's where the rubber hits the road on almost everything. And yes, there's a whole epistemology behind that. But it doesn't matter. There are many people who have a healthy epistemology, but with rotten morality. There are many people who have a compartmentalized epistemology. They do well with science and math, but not with anything else. But if we can get their morality right, then now they have an incentive to get their epistemology right. Because to be egoistic is to be rational. To be rational is to get your concepts right, to get the tools of cognition right. Now you better study some epistemology to get better at it. So to get capitalism, we have to fight altruism. Fight altruism in every dimension, everywhere, wherever it is. So I'm going to end with this story of a startup in Silicon Valley, just to show you how deep this altruism goes and how insidious it is and how it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So this is a story, New York Times. New York Times still provides value because it tells you how wacky the world really is. Anyway, this is a story about a real story, true story. True in the New York Times, right? A story about a new company that was recently founded in Silicon Valley. It's received 1.25 million of startup capital by the accelerator, Y Combinator. Y Combinator is one of the better legendary venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, in the world. It's run by people who you would not call leftists. It's run by people who are, very critical of the left. It's run by people who are, quite consider themselves pro-capitalist. The name of the business, right? This is a business just started. By the way, Y Combinator launched Airbnb, DoorDash, Instacart, Coinbase, Twitch, Reddit. All of those were creation or funded by Y Combinator. Y Combinator is one of the most admired groups, and I have a huge amount of respect for them. Anyway, the name of this company is Altruists. 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 Now, this is the problem that the founder of this company observed. They live in a wealthy community. Silicon Valley, New York, name the community, doesn't really matter. They live among people who are relatively secular, who don't go to church, who don't have organized religion, who are successful, relatively wealthy, and are trying to figure out how to raise their kids. And try to figure out how to live good lives. And they, what they miss, what they don't have, is religion. They've rejected religion. Certainly they've rejected organized religion. They get that that's wrong, makes no sense, inconsistent with their rational view of the world. But what are they looking for? They're looking for values. They're looking at how to educate their kids to be good people. And they're looking to have meaning in their own life. They're looking for what? What's the one word thing that they're looking for? They're looking for morality. They're looking for ethics. They're looking for a moral code. And the only place they know that has a moral code, I'm not talking about morality, I'm not talking about the idea you shouldn't kill people. Well, yeah, everybody knows that they're not going to be murderers. They generally don't lie, they're generally honest, they're productive people. So they have like a basic common sense kind of moral code, but they don't have a moral code. They don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know where to get moral pride. They don't know how to strive to be what it means to be good. And they feel like something is missing. There's something in their lives that's really missing. And they know religion has it. And they don't know where else. So they look for a secularized version of religion. They've rejected the mysticism. But they clearly have not rejected the altruism. So they try to volunteer and they give at the end of the year. They give to all the charities, but it's just not satisfying. And they'd like to do more volunteering, but it's a hassle. And where do you volunteer and what do you do? And they want to take their kids. And to them, morality means, in this article, the morality is presented as volunteering, doing things for others. How do we get that? So what this startup does is it's a subscription. You pay altruists a monthly fee. And every month they send you a box that engages you and your kids in some activity that generates a sense of charity, of volunteerism, of maybe a little bit of sacrifice, of doing something that helps others. And every month you get to do this. Like the first month, you got a box about homelessness. And in the box, you had this little thing where you built a home, and there was a whole discussion about why some people can't, and why some people don't have homes, and how sad it is, and what you could do to help them, and the stuff you could send them. There's a booklet that addresses questions about homelessness. And then there's a little keychain, and you can send them. There's an address or a place that you can, like a shelter, you can send something to the homeless person, maybe a check, maybe the kid takes his $10 allowance in this case, and he sends it as a donation, and he kind of guilts the parent into, not guilts, the parent jumps at the opportunity to add his $100, and they send it in, and now the kid feels like he's done something. And it's like the violin lessons, the tutors, all that, that's great, but that's not teaching them morality. This is. And it's something parents and children can do together. And it's instead of going to church. And it's instead of volunteering at the church. And every month you get a new assignment. And every month you get to appease your altruism a little bit. And it's a bunch of spoiled brats who don't know what to do with their time. I mean, one of the sections of this article, it's a little funny, and the article is written in a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, but they say, you know, they're in the market for deconstructing religion. So they've rejected God and the church and all of that, but they still want this feeling of religion, so they meditate. Now, I'm not against meditation, but I think a lot of people use meditation as a substitute. So, you know, he's talking about himself here. The writer says, I'm already spending each night meditating with Laszlo via Headspace app, which gamifies our path to enlightenment. Current run streak, 25 days. Total time meditated, 30 hours. Average duration, 7 minutes, because it's all in the app, right? Total days without meditation, without mentioning meditation in conversation, 0. They're also looking for holidays, because now that they're not religious, what kind of holidays should they celebrate? Maybe they should diversify their holidays, or maybe they need new holidays to invent. Maybe they should discover ancient Hebrew holidays that most Jews in America don't celebrate, so maybe now they should embrace these new ones. And then, of course, there is the altruism box that they get every month. And this is a startup. And people are going to sign up for this. And this woman, convinced, some of the smartest venture capitalists on the planet, that this is something that could make a lot of money. A lot of money. And this is the kind of superficial life that people are living. What they're looking for is real values. What they're looking for is a real moral code. What they're looking for is meaning in their life. And it's not like they're not productive. They're probably very productive. But they don't know productiveness should be a central purpose. They don't know productive is a virtue. They don't know that the fact that they're making money is a good thing. So they don't get any sense of pride out of it, so it doesn't bring them meaning. For something to bring you meaning, you have to recognize it as important. They want to be spiritual, but they don't understand what spirituality is. They don't understand what human consciousness requires. So they look to religion to get their morality and to get their spirituality, even if they dump God. Now that's messed up. And it just shows you how badly the world needs Ayn Rand and how badly the world needs objectivism. It needs a philosophy. It needs a morality, a clear moral code, a selfish moral code, and a clear set of values that you can actually live by, you can actually succeed by, and you can actually attain pride, achieving. Anyway, I thought that was subscription box. The title of the article is The Subscription Box That Teaches Kids to Do Good. Do good is taken for granted as helping others. That's what too good to do good means. There's no other to do good. All right. I hope you found that rant helpful. Interesting, at least. Entertaining. Something. All right. Let's see. I'm going to go through the big Super Chat questions to see the ones that are related directly, and then we'll go backwards. One of Varsha's followers made the comment, deprivation is just as coercive as physical force. And I believe withdrawing someone's means of survival because, screw you, I've got mine, is morally abhorrent. What's a good response? Well, deprivation, nobody's depriving you of anything. If I don't want to associate with you, i.e. hire you, i.e. contract with you, I'm not depriving you of anything. You don't own me. To claim that I'm depriving you of something is to claim that you are my master and I am your slave. So the idea that you either work or starve is not work for somebody. It's you either produce the values necessary for your own survival or you starve. Now, there is one other option. Somebody else produced the values for you to survive. But somebody, you or somebody else, has to produce the values. To say that if you don't want to work and I produce the values and I don't give them to you, I'm depriving you of something, is to make me your slave. It's to say that your life is more important than my life. It's to say that my moral obligation, through and through, is your survival, not mine. And that's just morally abhorrent and wrong. Metacat, thank you. Bonnie Bertrand, thank you. James G, we'll get to your question in a little bit. But that's the problem. I mean, I didn't talk about this, but another psychological manifestation of, and I've talked about this a lot in previous shows. They want to escape reality. They want the Garden of Eden. They want outcomes without causes. They want wealth without the creators of wealth. They want a high standard of living without having to work for it. They want the outcome without the cause. They don't understand the cause. They don't understand where it comes from. And they don't care. They want to go back to the Garden of Eden. Just everything's there. And remember, I've said this before, God, one of the punishments God inflicts on human beings when he kicks them out of the Garden of Eden is that they now have to work or die. And these kids and their children, psychologically, their children, they're still railing against God. They're still longing to return to the Garden of Eden. They're still pissed off at the snake and at Eve for getting them kicked out. They want food and shelter and their iPads and their video games and their super duper machines and their $1,000 headphones and all the cool stuff that they live with. But they don't want to do anything that they don't feel like doing. And if they do have to do something that doesn't feel right to them at the moment, it's wage slavery. And that is deeply psychological, because it's this mentality, passive mentality of just entitlement and a hatred of reality. A resentment of reality. It's reality that's forcing them to do stuff they don't really want to do. And it truly is amazing. The more I think about it, the more I see this Garden of Eden phenomena all over the place. I can't remember who first came up with this. It might have been Don Watkins that came up with the Garden of Eden. Maybe it was Ayn Rand. I don't know where I got it from, but I think I'm probably the one who's mentioned it more often than anybody else, because I see it everywhere, and it's a really useful way of thinking about it. And then I see Jordan Peterson trying to explain the Garden of Eden and these other things and the perverted nature of his explanations. All right. Can you explain the Brazilian Brazil, let's do this quickly because it's on topic. Why is it anti-capitalist? Brazil has more resources than Mexico, yet it is poorer. Thoughts on Brazil's future? I mean, Brazil is anti-capitalist because Brazil has been dominated by anti-capitalist thinkers. Brazil and the whole of Latin America have been dominated by what are called continental philosophers, by German philosophy, by the whole string of philosophies and Kant and Hegel and Schopenhauer and Karl Marx. And they were never exposed. Brazilian educational system has never been really exposed to the Enlightenment, to the non-German, non-romantic philosophers, and they've never developed the Anglo-Saxon relative respect for individualism and therefore for capitalism. So Brazil needs individualism. It needs, John Locke and the Enlightenment. It needs Aristotle. It's far too immersed in collectivistic, during romantic philosophical thinking. And of course, the fact that Brazil is so Catholic, so religious, is, just reinforces the altruism in Brazil. I mean, what Brazil needs is, right? What Brazil needs is to reject Christianity, to reject German romantic philosophy, and to embrace individualism. And until you do that, you might be a little bit freer and a little less free and a little freer depending on who the president happens to be at any given point in time. But generally, you'll stay poor. Brazil is not wealthy, even in aggregate. It's not wealthy, even though it's got 200 million people. It's a big country, 250, I think. The wealth is very concentrated because of the nature of the crony fascist type economy that they have. It's very concentrated in the hands of a few, many of them very, very corrupt. Brazil doesn't need a Pinochet. Brazil needs capitalism. Brazil needs freedom. And there was some hope that Bolsonaro would do that, but he hasn't. He hasn't because he's never was committed to it, even though he appointed a pro-capitalist finance minister. Bolsonaro himself, was never committed to capitalism, was never committed to free markets. And Brazil is not getting them under his presidency, unfortunately. But I don't know what Brazil's future is. On the one hand, I think that I meet a lot of amazing Brazilians who have the right ideas. Ayn Rand is very popular in Brazil, but I don't see the intellectual and I don't see the political leadership that can really make a difference in Brazil. So what Brazil needs is freedom, and to get freedom, it needs individualism. All right, let's see. All right, we'll do that. Andrew writes, a psychological commonality of anti-work leftists and front porch conservatives is the attempt to remove the experience of stress and struggle from life. It reflects a view of human beings as emotional and weakling. Absolutely. And I was going to mention front porch conservatives. And generally conservatives. I mean, the first real critics of capitalism were the conservatives, particularly in Germany, who resented the changes. Capitalism brought about economic changes, but much more fundamentally, it brought about social changes. People left the small villages and moved to the cities. People abandoned agriculture and went to industry. Social hierarchy was abolished. Capitalism, politically and socially, is egalitarian, in a sense that you're not born special. And the conservatives in Germany hated that. I mean, they railed against capitalism. It caused people to abandon the church. It caused people to be individualistic. It caused people to marry who they wanted. It caused people to switch careers. It destroyed tradition. It demolished the past. It was completely new. And conservatives flipped out. What conservatives, and this is why conservatism is such a wrong word and a wrong title, but it's so fundamentally corrupt. Because it's about the past, it's about tradition, it's about the status quo. Whereas at least I am a revolutionary. And front porch conservatism is the divine right of stagnation. Ayn Rand wrote a whole essay about this. They want things to stay the same. They don't want things to change. They don't want effort. They don't want stress. They don't want to move to get a better job. They don't want to move to avoid unemployment. They don't want to move, period. They want to be the same place their grandparents were. They want to live in the same house on the same porch. Smoke the same pipe. They resent Silicon Valley because it's a bunch of young people smashing the status quo. Who needs those apps? So Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of commonality between them. Huge amount of commonality between them. All right, just to remind everybody before you leave, if you could like the show, we should have over 100 likes by now. So I'd really appreciate it if you just like the show before you leave. Let's see. If you like some of my shows, particularly the short videos, share them. That's how we spread the word. And of course, if you're not a subscriber to the show, please subscribe. Hopefully you find what I do interesting, entertaining, educational, and inspiring. And you want to be a subscriber and you want to listen to more. So just click the subscribe button. And of course, if you really want to support the show, you can do so on YaronBrookShow.com/support, Patreon, or Subscribe Star. And of course, you can do it here on the Super Chat. And we're only $46 away. I thought today would be a stronger Super Chat day given how we started. I mean, we started gangbusters. And then it kind of tapered off. So $46 to reach the goal of $400. So a couple of $25 questions and we're done in terms of our fundraising goals. So please chip in, ask a question, try to stump me. I know there was some discussion of vaccines earlier. There's discussion of all kinds of stuff going on. I don't know, American foreign policy, whatever. Ask a question. Even $5 is fine. $2 is fine. Just value, trade value for value. All right, let's see. We had a $100 question from Michael. Michael is one of our most generous supporters of on Super Chat, on the Super Chat. I mean, he's always here. He's always using Super Chat to ask questions. He's always contributing to the show. Really appreciate it, Michael. Michael writes, objectivists tend to think genetics play almost no role in what the individual is capable of. I agree. The individual has the ability to select between alternatives within the scope of his capacity. However, the scope of his capacity is significantly determined genetically. I think that's right. I don't think objectivists reject the idea that genetics plays a role in your capacity. I cannot run as fast as Manute Bolt, not only because he practices more, which is an important factor, but because he has a certain body type, a certain bone structure, a certain muscle structure that is genetically made up. Now, he still couldn't have been broken all the world records without all the practicing, without the effort, without the thought, without the engineering, right? Usain Bolt, I mean, he's amazing. But if you've seen documentaries about him, Usain Bolt. If you see documentaries about him, he worked super hard to get to that point. And that's what some people don't do. So it's within the capacities that you have, certainly, with what genes you're provided with. Look, and the fact is, does the environment you grow up matter? Yes. It can make it easier for you or harder for you. But it won't determine it for you. So within your capacities and within the opportunities your environment makes possible, what do you do with that? How much do you push? How much thought do you provide it? How much focus do you bring to it? How hard do you work? But it's not just about hard. It's about smart. How smart do you work? All of that is issues of free will, of choices you make. That is up to you. You can't change your genes, and you can't change the parents you were born with. Not until a certain age where you can leave them and abandon them. But you can change what you do with what you have. Oh, I confused with Manute Bolt. Sorry, yes, Usain Bolt. An amazing athlete. Amazing athlete. All right, thank you, Michael. Good question. Good clarification. Dave Goodman writes, can you do a show on Aristotle and his contributions? A lot of objectivists only hold Aristotle in high regard, because of what Ayn Rand said about him, not from first-hand knowledge. Maybe you can have Harry Binswanger on to discuss it. Yeah, that's a good idea. I should have one of our ancient philosophy experts on the show to discuss Aristotle. I mean, we've got a few who are experts in Aristotle, Robert Mayhew and Greg Salamieri and others. All right, let's see. So I'll try to do that. Yeah, Shazbot. Another $20 question. I forgot to mention. Oh, Jeff, thank you. Wow. All right, Jeff just took us over the $400. One big swoop. Thank you for the 50 Canadian dollars. All right, so we're at 415. You know, but we're not settlers. We're not settlers. Okay, so KPHAX says he seconds the topic about Aristotle, but he wants it with Greg Salamieri. I didn't mention Greg as one possibility. But yes, Greg is another potential to do the show with. Thanks for the support. Yeah, we're not settlers. We're not going to settle for $435. We should easily be able to make $500, $600, $1,000. I know there are a few whales out there that could just write a $400 check and get us there. Let's see. Yeah, Shazbot says, I forgot to mention that if you decide to watch The Wind Rises, you should watch it in the original Japanese audio with English subtitles. Much more enjoyable that way. Yeah, I would never watch a movie dubbed. I hate dubs. I would much rather read subtitles. So if I watch The Wind Rises, and I'll try to watch it, I will definitely do it. I would definitely do it in the original Japanese. Thanks for the heads up. And I think I'm going to do, for your contribution for review, I think I'm going to do the one Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think my wife and I are going to watch that. I'm not sure exactly when, just because my living situation right now is crazy because we're in this condo that's being renovated, and then I'm traveling. But I'm going to try to do it before I travel. So hopefully we can catch this movie maybe this weekend. All right. Have you ever read John Milton's Paradise Lost? It suggests a fallen man was allowed by God because man can be happy or free in Eden. I don't know Peterson, but he's probably influenced by it in the way of distortion. Yes, I mean, I think that's right. I think to understand that man cannot be happy or free in Eden is an important observation. To understand that actually to live around and to live and wow. There's somebody there just railing about American imperialism on the chat. So it's a very good observation psychologically that indeed the Garden of Eden is not good for human beings. The Garden of Eden is boring. There's no achievement. There's no success. And therefore there's no happiness. There are no values. There's no values. There's nothing to strive for. Everything is just given to you. So the Garden of Eden is actually a disaster for human beings. It's horrible for human beings. For John Milton to recognize that is a real achievement. Now, Jordan Peterson would say, well, yeah, but we can't be happy in this world either. I mean, I'm not sure what Jordan Peterson would think about the Garden of Eden and happiness, whether he thinks you're happy there. But yes, there's no sex in the Garden of Eden. There's no pleasure. There's just, I mean, this is the sense in which the Garden of Eden is accurate. The story. This is my interpretation. And I think this is the most benevolent interpretation you can give it. I can't remember if I read this somewhere, if I thought of it. Sometimes I don't remember where stuff comes from. In the Garden of Eden, human beings are animals. They're no different than animals. They don't require anything extraordinary. Their survival depends on picking fruit, on, just doing stuff in nature. It doesn't require any particular effort. There's no mind. The tree of knowledge, you haven't eaten from it, so there's no mind. There's no reason. There's just survival. There's no joy, there's no happiness, but there's no struggling, and there's no pain, and there's no suffering. There's life as I think most animals. And then human beings gain from biting the apple. They gain something. What is it that they gain? What they gain is, according to the Bible, they gain knowledge. But what is that standing in for? What they really gain is human consciousness. What they gain is free will. And once they have free will, or you can think of it differently, what they gain is reason. Reason, implicit in reason, is free will. What they gain is reason. They suddenly look around and they see things, and they understand things. And they can change the world out there. And suddenly they're more ambitious than they thought they were before. And suddenly sex is more meaningful than it was before. Suddenly sex is about pleasure and about happiness. So it's a transition, if you will. The Garden of Eden story is really the story of transitioning from the evolution from an animal to a being of reason, a being of human consciousness, of free will. That's what it really represents, if you want to think about it, is from animal to rational being. Yes. That's the most positive way to view it. And then, of course, the suffering is overlaid. That's the Jordan Peterson overlay. Let's see, what do we got here? We got a couple of additional questions. One second, let me just, Stephen Naruto says, showing love for the podcast again. Thank you, Naruto. Thanks for educating me at work. I recommend a show called Mr. In Between. Good show about losing a war with reality and how using force isn't sustainable. Interesting take on justice, though. Okay, I'll definitely look that up. Thank you. Mr. In Between. Never heard of that. Is it on like Netflix or something like that? All right, I'll find it. All right, let's see. Where are we? Oops, we got a couple of... Shali, thank you. Just dropping by. Keep up the good work. Really appreciate it. Atlas spoke. Just a thank you, Dr. Brooke. Great to see you fighting the stillborn lies of looters and living light of reason. Goldspeed, thank you. Atlas, $5. Charlie's 20. That's great. Thank you for the support. We're already up to over $500, so that's really great. All right. Let's see. Oh, how did I miss? I missed these questions. Sorry. Seems like I missed two of the big super chat questions from early on. They got pushed up. OMG Puppies writes, during Soviet occupation, some Polish scientists did a secret study of evil political ideology. One conclusion was people with cluster B personality disorder could not comprehend human nature and embraced Marx. I don't know what cluster B personality disorder is, but and why they couldn't comprehend human nature. So the real question is why? Why did they have that particular personality? What choices did they make that led them to that? So I'll try to look it up. I'm not familiar with that. Adam writes, Adam always is recommending good Korean TV. The Korean TV series Crash Landing on You has more Ayn Rand-inspired characters and themes than anything I've seen from American intelligentsia. Should we continue to bet on America, or will the second renaissance come to East Asia first? I think there's a potential that comes to East Asia first, and I think one of the reasons is they don't have Christianity. I think the thing that holds us back more than anything else is Christianity. It makes socialism possible, and it keeps altruism alive. But I think Christianity, the fact that East Asia doesn't have Christianity is a huge advantage for them. So hard to tell where it comes from, but East Asia is an exciting place. It's an exciting place to see. All right. Why are countries like Switzerland and Singapore doing better economically with less resources? Will anti-capitalism impact dual citizenships? Why are countries like Switzerland and Singapore doing better economically with less resources? Because they're free. Switzerland and Singapore are two examples of countries with no natural resources, but have free economic systems, a respect for property rights, a respect for contract rights, and they mostly leave people alone. Singapore is number 1 on the Economic Freedom Index. Switzerland is, I think, is number 3 or something, depending on which index you look at. And that's why they're doing better than the rest of the world, because of economic freedom. Michael says, all cruelty springs from weakness. Aristotle said that. There's a lot of truth for that. Weak people have low self-esteem, project that weakness and low self-esteem on others, and express it in trying to subvert the ability of other people to be happy and to be successful. Jennifer asked, $20, there's a Star Trek 1 episode with a planet with spores to make you happy, but they had no accomplishments and no passion. Cook saw it was not good for them. Yes, absolutely. I liked the first Star Trek because it had these philosophical themes. And often those philosophical themes were absolutely, there was truth there, whether the writers fully understood it or not. I guess that's the same question as Stephen. There's an original Star Trek where they land on a planet like Eden. They all want to stay, and Cook has to talk them into leaving. Yeah, I think that's the same show. And that's right. So the writers get it at some point, at some level. And Cook is this combination of Spock, reason, and Dr. McCoy, passion. And he applies his passion to his reason, and he's a good integrated human being. There's a little bit too much of a mind-body dichotomy in Star Trek, but it's very smart on how it presents the stories. All right, Michael also asks, many women today say they want equality, but what they really want is superiority. I don't know about many women. Some women want that. There's certainly a group of women out there who want that. But I don't know how many they are. I know that there's a lot of men who complain about women. I don't really see it. I see a lot of women who are striving to achieve a life for themselves, striving to be successful, and at the same time, be feminine. And it's I don't think it's easy because it's new. The idea of women working, women being successful, women running railroads, that's new. That's the last 50, maximum 100 years, right? Women having those responsibilities, women also having kids and balancing all that. So it's not surprising that some women don't know how to quite handle it. And it's not surprising, given the state of our philosophy and given the state of feminism, that some women want to be superior. But I think most women just want to have a good life and figure out what that means and how to do it, just like most men. James G. writes, Switzerland's policy on fighting climate change has been thrown into doubt after voters rejected key measures in a popular vote. Is this altruistic? Well, it sounds like Switzerland's rejecting sacrificing for the sake of climate change. So it sounds like it's not altruistic. It sounds like it's the Swiss are relatively individualistic. relatively sane, relatively rational, and they're rejecting some of the nutty climate change requirements that the government would like to impose, and some of the intellectuals would like to impose. Thoughts on religious pro-capitalist people. Will they help make people become more individualist? Is capitalism moving to secular countries? No. Religious pro-capitalist people are people who evade their religion, reinterpret their religion to fit their capitalism. I tell them, because I often speak in front of people like that they love Thomas Jefferson more than they love Jesus, and they love the Constitution more than they love the Bible. And that allows them to get away with it. But that fundamentally capitalism and religion are incompatible. And they might try to force it, but nobody actually buys it. Right? And so no, I don't think that'll help make people more individualistic. Because I think that ultimately religion is tribal. Ultimately religion is, a default on your own mind, a default on your own independence, and therefore it's individualism built in, even though it have aspect of you have a personal relationship with God, which are individualistic. At the core of it, it is tribal. Is capitalism moving to secular countries? No, because, certainly capitalism is a feature of countries that have relegated religion to a more minor role in their societies. So secular countries are the ones that tend to be capitalist. And I think that the example of East Asia is a good example where capitalism or free markets are thriving relative to the West, and they're completely non-religious countries. But secular philosophy is very Christian in its morality. And as a consequence, both secular and religious are now undermining capitalism in both religious and secular countries. Why is freedom, whether economic or social, so hard to accomplish? Because freedom is an achievement. People don't want freedom automatically. Freedom is something you really, really, really have to want. And that requires that you have confidence in yourself and your ability to thrive under freedom. Freedom means nobody's going to take care of you. You're going to take care of yourself. Freedom means you have to have a benevolent view of the world and your fellow man, and a strong commitment to your own ability and your own ability to achieve and be successful. Freedom means a benevolent view towards the universe. That is a view that if you apply your reason, you will be successful. And that you do have a reason and you're capable of reason. All of those things are required for people to love freedom. You have to love yourself, love reality, love the world, and have confidence in your ability and in your mind. That's what we need to teach people. And if people get that, they'll demand freedom. They'll demand freedom. So it's the psychological and ethical preconditions of freedom that are hard, which people reject. Naruto asks, random business question. You have a giving level, $500 for half an hour of your time quarterly. No, so this is the deal. $250 a month gets you half an hour of my time quarterly. $500 a month gets you half an hour of my time monthly. $1,000 a month gets you an hour of my time monthly. 1,000 and above gets you an hour of my time monthly. Now he goes on. So you guys, if you want, you can sign up on YaronBrookShow.com/support, and if you make those contributions, $250 for half an hour, $500 for a half an hour every month. The $250 is quarterly, and $1,000 for an hour every month. You can do that, and you can sign up. Now, Naruto asks if he can do a one-time purchase. Absolutely. So if you just want half an hour of my time, $500, just email me. You do a $500 thing on PayPal, and we can chat for half an hour on Zoom sometimes. So that is open to everybody. If you want an hour, it's $1,000. So basically, my going rate to just chat with you on Zoom or face to face, if we're somewhere close by, is $500 for half an hour, $1,000 for an hour. All right. Don't forget to like the show before you leave. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to support the show at YaronBrookShow.com/support. Patreon, Subscribestar, Locals. And of course, thank you to all the Super Chat contributors. This was fun. Really appreciate all the questions. Really appreciate the support. The fact that we went over $500 is fantastic. You guys always step up. So thank you. Really appreciate it. And I will see you all on Thursday. Bye, everybody.